We begin with a horrifying double murder that has haunted the victims' loved ones and even the most seasoned detectives for decades. Everything was going so well for Elizabeth Watkins and her 2-year-old daughter Nicole when their lives were so suddenly taken. It's still hard for many to grasp the events of November 3rd, 1995. The mother and daughter were both murdered. They were found with Liz cradling baby Nicole, trying to protect her. Investigators say the public's help is crucial and may be the only way this case ever gets solved.
In a blink of an eye, you can have two people that you love so much and wake up the next morning and they're gone. Violently taken away.
A horrific discovery.
Is it even true? You know, did I hear it correctly? Or both of them? This is impossible, you know.
So many things unexplainable.
There's no rhyme or reason. There's nothing.
When it appears that evil just comes out of the shadows, that's disturbing for all of us.
To truly understand the gravity of the murders, you have to go back a few years before that November night.
I can still remember the day she told me she was pregnant. We just cried.
Elizabeth, or Liz as friends called her, moved to Renton with her best friend Tammy, largely to get away from the trauma she experienced after having a stillborn son years earlier in California. She never thought she'd have another chance at motherhood.
She was happy before, but this just put a whole nother outlook on life.
She was a humble person and a very grateful person.
Starting a new chapter as a single mother, Liz became involved in a local church.
It was so meaningful for Liz to realize that there was a whole community of people that cared not only for her, but most importantly, that cared for her baby.
One of those people was Barb Smith.
They could have been soul sisters because Barb has that same heart for people.
She made a difference in people's lives, and not everybody can say that.
Barb was there, eager to help support Liz as she pursued a dream of becoming a nurse.
And she was doing so well for herself. She had a goal, and she was going for it.
It became part of their routine, Barb sometimes helping Liz study. Such was the plan Saturday, November 4th, 1995.
And I literally parked facing her apartment. I could see that the sliding glass door was open just a little bit. And I went to the sliding glass door and called her, and she didn't answer.
My friend and her little baby daughter are laying on the floor. On the floor? Yes, and there's blood everywhere. Okay. Does it appear that they have been shot or stabbed, or do you know what's going on? I didn't touch it because please.
I can literally feel it in my body right now. I kind of have chills remembering the day I got the call.
You just need to take a deep breath because I want to help you, okay? We had an agreement that I was going to come here for lunch, and I've been trying to call her and she didn't answer. That's fine. Does it appear that there's been trauma, or what does it appear? Really?
One thing I felt later was sort of a sense of honor that it was me that found them, because someone that loved them and cared about them instead of just some stranger or the police or, you know, whatever, to find them. I felt like that I was sent to be there.
Trying to absorb what was just not acceptable. It was so unreal.
Going to those things changes you.
Back then, Sergeant Russell Radke was a new detective tasked with helping process crime scenes.
It was horrific. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. And I was a single widowed father with a child the same age. So when you talk about walking into a crime scene and it's not like a standard crime scene, right? There's a component of how do I even separate out my own stuff from what I'm seeing in front of me at this point. See, it was awful.
This case really left a mark on you.
Yeah, it did.
And he's not alone. The reason this case came onto our radar was through conversations with retired investigators, ones we'd consider have pretty much seen it all. They told us this is the one case they can't seem to shake, yet from day one, there's been so little to go off on. An autopsy determined Liz and 2-year-old Nicole had been bludgeoned to death with an unknown weapon never found, seemingly brought to the scene and taken with them by the killer. Investigators believe the killings took place around 5 p.m. the evening before they were found. It would have still been light outside. There was no forced entry, no sign of sexual assault, nothing stolen. Aside from the bodies, the apartment was essentially spotless.
There was nothing that stood out, which is just super unusual. And I've since then obviously been to more than a handful, and I can't say that I've ever walked in one with that same feeling.
Then and now, there was a disturbing lack of evidence.
If it's a crime of passion, the suspect traditionally makes a whole bunch of mistakes, right? Because they're in the throes of this anger or whatever it is that's driving them. And so there's pieces of themselves. If there was a fight, there's blood splatter, and there's hair, and there's weapons, and there's things turned over, and right, there's just a bunch of other things that weren't in this crime scene.
To complicate things even further, detectives couldn't find anything in Liz's life, past or present, that would have put her in the crosshairs with any dangerous people.
That doesn't make sense. There's nothing no road you can follow that could give you an answer.
No debts, drugs, or love affairs. Liz's life seemed to revolve around Nicole, church, and school. The few people who could classify as an obvious suspect, like an ex, Nicole's father, or family, were ruled out through solid alibis.
Who would do this? There was no reason. She was just a kind, wonderful person who didn't make any trouble. I mean, she was just, and a baby? Who would kill a baby? 2-year-old that couldn't have possibly harmed anyone. I mean, she was too young to be able to describe the person. I mean, but who would kill a baby?
The brutal murder of baby Nicole, perhaps the biggest aspect of this already so baffling case that makes it just unfathomable.
She did what a good mom would do.
She literally was trying to protect Nicole, that Nicole was under attack as much as she would have been. And I mean, who can imagine that? I mean, that is, you know, at least for me, that I cannot imagine any human being who could harm a baby like that, let alone in her mother's arms.
I can't imagine what was in Liz's mind for whatever short amount of time that was there. That just breaks my heart.
It's easy to go down a rabbit hole of questions and thoughts. The chilling possibility it was completely random, and how few tips have ever come in about the killer.
Obviously they had something in their hands. And if it was as violent as it was, did they not have blood on them? Where did they go? Somebody has to know something.
The walls aren't that thick. To this day, you can stand in the hallway and hear conversations in 2 or 3 different apartments. So it's not possible for somebody to have not heard something.
It's a thought that makes the idea of having any healing from the murders impossible.
Here was a person that was making it, and then to have it upended in such a heinous way, it really, it settled on this congregation in a very, very sad and deep, deep way.
She was a good person. She was being a good mother, and by all accounts, was with a good kid who got no chance. You know, yeah, people should care.
She would have been a fabulous nurse. She would have been the best nurse ever. And so yeah, the world lost a lot. Not just us who considered her a friend, and not just her family, but Our community lost. Our community lost this darling little child that would have grown up to be somebody good.
My best friend in the world. That was the day Nicole was born.
For Tammy, losing her best friend and godchild altered her life in a way few could ever understand. She couldn't stay in her home anymore, too many memories with the two of them. She also had to leave her job at a Christian daycare, something she'd so cherished before the murders.
I was angry at God at that moment. And it's so weird to be so thankful to him one moment and then so angry the next. And a lot of it there was, I could not be in that church and with those children. And it's like, why? Why Nicole? What? I mean, they always say, oh, well, they're in a better place. God had a reason. Well, we had a reason for her too, you know? And if God had a reason for him, he wouldn't have let him go that way. That's not the way they would go. This was just evil that took them. You know, it wasn't, well, God had them. No, God did not have them in their hands that night.
Whatever evil took them that night is still out there. The twisted, maddening mystery of it all, tainting the memories of a mother and daughter who had everything to live for.
She was just so excited for the future, you know, and Nicole had her whole life ahead of her. You don't just take someone from someone like that. I want people to know that they were so loved and are so missed, and they didn't just take Liz and Nicole's life, really. Anyone that had anything to do with her or that knew her and loved her, they took part of us too.
A special thanks to photojournalist Michael Driver, who edited that story you just watched. Again, there is a puzzling lack of clues in this case, so that's why we're asking you for your help tonight. You can submit an anonymous tip to Crime Stoppers and possibly be eligible for a cash reward of up to $1,000. Download the P3 Tips app on your smartphone or call 1-800-222-TIPS.